those of you who don't know me, my name is Christopher Dent. I'm the leader of SustainNET, a new sustainability initiative at Edge Hill University. We began in February this year, and SustainNET now has over 30 staff members to it and 20 student members. And this is the second of our webinar series. We held our first webinar, was it 2 Tuesdays ago? And it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Jenna Foskett and Michelle Lee, who are going to be talking about fast fashion needs to slow down. So I'm now going to hand over to Jenna and Michelle, and they've got a PowerPoint presentation to guide us through their talk. What we'll have is about 30 minutes for the presentation, and then because we've only got a free Zoom account, I'm going to have to kick in the question and answer session with a second Zoom invitation link that you should all have, but I'll come on to that at the end of this session. Right, okay, so Jenna and Michelle, would you like to take it away from here then, please?
Yeah.
Okay, does that work? Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so fast fashion needs to slow down. It's not working.
Oh. It's not showing the next slide.
Yeah, it's not. One sec.
If it's easier, Jenna, you don't have to put it on slideshow mode. You can just go from one page to another.
There we go.
Okay.
What is fast fashion? Fast fashion is clothing that has come from catwalk trends straight into high street stores. Shops keep up with the latest trends and continuously have new products coming in on a weekly basis. Originally, fast fashion stores would only have 4 seasons a year, taking 1 to 2 years to prepare the clothing line to come out into stores. And Zara was the first fast fashion chain that decided they wanted to make more money. So they came up with the idea they would just, instead of coming up with their own ideas, they'd take it straight off catwalk ideas. So instead of only having 4 seasons a year, we now have 52 micro seasons. So clothes are coming in new lines on a weekly basis rather than 4 times a year.
So we got a product example here, which is Balenciaga trainers. You might know them as sock shoes around on the internet. And basically, they first came out about at the price of £600. And since they were so popular, many other brands, for example, River Island, saw the idea and produced what they call knockoff versions. So those are £38.99, which is about 15 times less than what they sold at. And it does make you wonder how they managed to cut down to a point where it's about £500 less. So that would be mainly coming out of, how do I put it? The price would be cut down through cheap labor, cheaper materials, and poor regulations. So we'll go on more about that later on. I'll explain a bit more about knockoffs. So they're legal as long as they don't fully copy the brand. So if they don't have stuff like the name of the brand itself tagged on, or do it completely the same, they can get away with that. Second example would be Kim Kardashian's cutout dress. I'm not sure if people have seen this. It was quite big on Twitter at some point. So this was a Thierry Mugler inspired vintage cutout dress from the 1998 archives, and it's called something. It's called haute couture, which means it's one of a kind and directly translated from French, that means high sewing. So usually when we get pieces of clothing like that, it would start from $1,000, and that's the lowest point. Since it's nightwear though, that would be significantly higher. The price I gave was for usually day wear, so what you might see celebrities wearing out and about. So that piece versus a Fashion Nova one, which was stolen in under 24 hours and made for, well, not made for, sorry, sold for $50. They managed to copy this in less than 24 hours by having material already in the factories ready to be processed.
What are the environmental impacts of fast fashion? High carbon dioxide emissions. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, found that the fast fashion industry produces 10% of global carbon dioxide emissions each year. This is caused through production, manufacturing, and transportation. Synthetic fibres are also made from fossil fuels. It is estimated that 1.5 trillion litres of water are used annually to produce products. That's through treatment and dyeing, turning raw materials into clothes. Approximately 2,700 litres of water is used just to make one shirt. Microplastics polluting the oceans, estimated by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, that microplastics from clothing account for 15 to 31% of plastic pollution in the oceans. Tons of clothing end up in landfill each year. Well-known tanneries such as Haribo Tannery produce up to more than 12,000 cubic metres of untreated waste per day. The fashion industry is the second largest clean water polluter in the world, falling only behind agriculture. This is due to chemicals during fibre production, dyeing and bleaching. These chemicals then end up in the water, and the water is then discharged into rivers and waterways and then can eventually end up back in the ocean. And also fertilisers in cotton are actually quite harmful and can end up water polluting as well. Soil degradation. Soil is an essential element in our ecosystem. Healthy soil is needed for food production and to also absorb CO2. Soil degradation contributes to global warming. This is the fast fashion industry causes this through overgrazing of pastures for cashmere from goats and from wool from sheep, and chemicals used to grow cotton. Also deforestation caused by wood-based fibres like rayon. Only about 30% of the wood that's cut down to produce rayon actually goes into use of clothing. The rest of it is then dumped or incinerated. Plastic in our clothes. Polyester, nylon, acrylic, and polyamide. Are all materials used in clothing, especially in fast fashion retailers, as these are cheap to use. When we wash these items of clothing, millions of tiny microplastic threads shed and are so small they can drain through the washing machines and wastewater treatment plants and end up in the ocean. Once in the sea, marine species eat these fibres. There have been studies where they found plastic fibres in seafood meant for human consumption. One of these studies was done by Exeter University and University of Queensland in Australia. They bought oysters, prawns, squid, crabs and sardines from a market and analysed them using a newly developed method that identifies and measures 5 different plastics simultaneously. The study found that plastic levels of 0.04 milligram per gram of tissue in squid, 0.07 milligram in prawn, 0.1 milligram in oysters, 0.3 milligram in crabs, and 2.9 milligrams in sardines. According to the leads in the study, a seafood eater could be eating 0.7 milligram of plastic when ingesting the average serving of oysters and squid, and up to 30 milligrams of plastic when eating sardines. 30 milligram of plastic is about 1 grain of rice.
Okay, so I'll go further on about polyesters, a little bit of chemistry about it. So the main way we get polyester is through crude oil, which we have to dig up, and that in itself is bad for the environment. So there's so much work you have to put into it so that it can be processed properly into usable materials. So polyester is a polymer. Polymers are a chain of repeating units, poly standing for many, and there are individual units held together by ester links. Esters are a functional group in chemistry where it's a carbon connected to one other oxygen and then double bonded to another, and then with the last link of carbon, as it has 4 links possible, it's linked to another carbon as well. It is a condensation process, meaning at the end of the process water is also made. So the most common unit that's used for polyester is the image on the bottom left, and then on the bottom right, that's the acid and alcohol used for this example in particular. Moving on. To shut it down, we will call it just PET. It says it's quite a long name. And different uses of polyester depend on the structure. The benzene ring, which is the image on the bottom right.
Different uses of polyester depend on the structure of the benzene rings in the molecular chain, give them a rigid structure, leading to high melting points of 500 K.
Is there someone talking? Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. Go on, Michelle, sorry.
So the benzene ring gives it rigid structure, so makes it more durable, which can be desirable for most clothes, especially ones for workers, like physical working people. And it has a high melting point as well from that bond. That would be over 500 kelvins. And from this as well, it is also used in conveyor belts and hoses. Another feature is that it does not discolor in the sun, so they don't have to worry about it bleaching from long exposure. And when it comes to clothes, people want to keep that for longer, so it's a bonus in that sense. So a benzene ring is a ring of carbon all linked together with 3 double bonds. And for polyester fibers in particular, it's long chains facing one direction. For the annual production of PET, it's all in units of tons. And the general trend here is that there would be more in places where they have factories to make the product itself, and it's lower in more developed countries as well. So next slide, please. So how much do we weigh? Oh, sorry. Was that your slide?
Can't remember. A study found each British person throws about 1.7 kilogram of fashion waste away each year, which is about the same weight of 3.5 pints of beer, which might not seem that heavy, but ask any waitress and she'll tell you that it is. Britain is the 4th largest textile waste producer in Europe. Each person on average spends £980.50 a year on new clothes, and the UK produces 206.456 tonnes of textile waste per year.
For the tons of the waste produced, that's like an average weight of a blue whale, which is the largest creature alive on our planet. It's fine, you can carry on. Okay, for sweatshops, these are factories where workers are paid very little and work long hours in bad conditions. It's an example of modern day slavery, and some people don't really have a choice when it comes to working in these sweatshops, since it's the only thing that's giving them money and providing for their families. So sweatshops produce water pollution, air pollution, acid rain, and many more due to the lack of followed regulations. So it would be pretty common for local rivers to be polluted by just dyes, and you'd see it throughout the country. So companies that still use these practices in 2020 are Primark, H&M, ASOS, Forever 21, Victoria's Secrets as well, even though they're a very well-known brand. Next slide, please.
Who are the biggest fashion retail? Who are the biggest fast fashion brands? We've got Topshop, Gap, Primark, Mango, Pull&Bear, H&M, Forever 21, Bershka, Next, River Island, Fashion Nova, and Urban Outfitters. These are normally shops that you just walk into on the high street. Like there's so many in Liverpool, Manchester, Southport, and I didn't even know myself until quite recently that places like Pull&Bear and Urban Outfitters were classed as fast fashion. You always assume sort of Primark, H&M, New Look, but even there's a price difference. They are actually still fast fashion.
So some business students here might know that H&M now is the leading fast fashion brand, and they do something called greenwashing. So greenwashing is disinformation disseminated by the organization to present themselves with an environmentally responsible public image. So they would call themselves earth-friendly, for example, but that's not the case, and they can just say that without any repercussions. So sustainability is a word that holds no legal power. Therefore, a brand is allowed to say that their fashion is sustainable without repercussions, even if their fashion is not actually sustainable. So there's some legal grey areas with this as well, since they could say they are chemical free, but they're still using tons and tons of water for maybe just a small batch of t-shirts, for example, and it would be passable since it's technically true. We've got some more examples of greenwashing coming up. So H&M's Conscious line, Topshop's Considered, Zara's Join Life, and then Urban Outfitters Eco Living collection. They also have this marketing scheme where they leave out clothing bins so that when you give in your old clothes, they'll give you a discount voucher to buy more of them. Sorry, did I?
It's just
Oh, right. What did I get up to? Sorry.
about the donating clothes for vouchers.
Yeah. That's it for that slide. Sorry, I was trying to move to the next one.
What can we do to reduce environmental impact through fashion? Buying second-hand through charity shops, Depop and vintage shops are some great ways to buy second-hand clothes. You can swap clothes with friends, try and fix damaged clothing rather than just throw them away. Buy less and think about how many wears you will get out of each garment. It's said that for when you think about buying an item of clothing, you need to think, will I wear this 30 times? And that's the amount that you really need to be getting out of each item. And upcycling and repurposing. Obviously, there are some items that you can't swap with friends or buy secondhand, like underwear, bras, and socks. So the best way to think about buying these is find actual sustainable brands that are local to you, that are made close to you as well, which means there's less transport for the clothes to go through, and also you're buying local. If you can't find any sustainable brands local, try and find small local brands that aren't as sustainable but still better than going to fast fashion. And then it's sort of like, as a last resort, if you've not got any of that near you or can't get anything like that, then you go to fast fashion. But you need to be thinking, will I wear this 30 times? Obviously stuff like basics, underwear and stuff, you probably will. Yeah. Any questions? What in the other Zoom call?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jenna and Michelle. That's fantastic. I think we can probably just take some questions now, because by my reckoning, we've got about 12 minutes left of this session. So if we need to run over, we will. So what I can do is just open this up to the floor now, and to see if there's anyone who would like to ask a question on this presentation. I'm just going to unmute everyone so you can all talk.
Feel free to type it down as well. Or,
Yes, yes. If you prefer to chat a question, that's also fine. And if there are no questions, I can always ask one, but I'm just going to wait a few more seconds.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Yeah,
Lucy,
absolutely.
go ahead, please.
What brands would you suggest then to avoid, as in greenwashing?
So the main ones we use that talks about, like H&M, New Look, Zara, Primark. Even Primark started greenwashing now. They bought out a 100% organic cotton line, and it turns out it's really not. And even cotton itself isn't great for the environment because of the amount of water cotton plants actually need. But it's really looking into yourself. Like, I tried to find some examples online, and every time I found one that looked good, there was like another article saying actually they're doing this. So finding sort of small sustainable brands like local to you are probably best.
Okay.
Great. I was wondering also, Jenna and Michelle, you could perhaps provide some information for us to post onto the internet, or onto the web page for this event, so people can always follow up on some of the suggestions you may have on that, or other points as well. So thank you. Michelle, did you want to say something, or was there a question from Anthony? Yes, would you like to ask a question, Anthony?
Yeah, do you know if you mentioned there's no agreement on what sustainability actually means in this industry. So is there like a move within the industry to come up with some consensus on maybe a few metrics that could be used to actually formalize the word, so that everybody knows what everyone's talking about, in a way of standardizing the process so you can get away from the greenwashing?
Yeah. The closest thing we have really is just regulations for the factories that are producing these things, and I've seen a few petitions about, but it's only a start, since fast fashion has only gained traction until recently, I think.
That's quite a recent development.
Since we know that cheap fashion is bad, but we still like the idea of it being cheap, and the economy now as well is struggling, so people will desire that even more. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but well, I hope personally to see some change in the future with more change coming through.
Someone's asked what materials are typically more sustainable. It really goes from what angle you look at it. So obviously your plastics are the least probably sustainable, and then cotton being more so than plastic. But then, like I said before about cotton, it uses an awful lot of water, and also the pesticides and fertilizers used to grow it aren't so great. I think I read somewhere that in the UK, wool is one of our most sustainable ones, if it's from UK sheep. But then at the same time, you've got your footprint from obviously the agriculture from the sheep for the wool. So there's always sort of something. But I think in the UK, probably like your natural stuff like wool. And obviously when you buy clothes made in the UK is much better than it being made elsewhere because of transport of it and stuff.
I know there's a few more materials coming through, like bamboo. I noticed that coming around more often, and that's a plant that grows quickly, so it won't need the same amount of fertilizer, pesticides to support them. So in that sense, I feel that it's almost more sustainable than cotton, even if cotton is a good alternative to plastic.
Yeah, I've seen them. Bamboo and hemp. There are a few underwear companies using bamboo and hemp to make underwear and stuff, which is they grow really quick, and yeah, don't need as much as other plants, so they are quite sustainable. It's just I don't think any fast fashion brands are using them yet.
Anthony, did you want to come back with another question or follow up?
Yeah, so it's kind of a follow-up. It's more specific, I guess, with the microplastics. So is there a requirement for producers to label a microplastic content? So can I be buying a product and I don't even know that that product's got microplastics in it?
The microplastics, they come from washing any item that is made from plastic.
No, but yeah, so the material, there's a requirement. Is there a requirement for that article that piece of clothing to be labeled that this contains a certain percentage of microplastics?
Don't think so. I think they normally just have on like 50% cotton, 50% polyester sort of thing.
So that might be a start for like as a way to, you know, kind of make the whole process more opaque, more transparent.
Yes. But they're quite sneaky, the fast fashion brands, because do you know on the labels it can say 100% recycled. Well, normally it doesn't say 100%, but like 40% recycled. If that's on the label, it can actually just be about the label and not the actual garment. So they're quite sneaky.
Yeah, so it's back to thinking a bit like greenwashing again. It's technically true, but just not for all of it. So they're quite vague when they usually describe their products, because if they're more specific, then someone can call them out on it and have mainly stuff like fines from the law. I got another question from the chat, was it?
Yes, David has another question for you, I think, from the chat.
So repurposing of used plastics for clothing. I'd say that would be sustainable, since it's not going into our landfills and we are reusing that plastic and repurposing it and not just throwing it away and leaving it. In places such like third world countries to just fill up holes in the ground.
Yeah, I think a
Zara
lot.
actually
Yeah,
did
sorry.
that. Zara did used plastic stuff, you making tops out of used plastic bottles, but it was part of the sort of eco
Greenwashing
campaign.
plan, yeah.
The which I think, yeah, if small businesses start doing it, stuff, but I think for the big companies to do it, it's more of a, oh, we've done this, but then they don't actually show how they've done it. It could just be clever marketing again.
Yeah, and then sometimes recycling, it is good. However, the carbon footprint for all those plastics from different places traveling to a specific factory for plastic to clothing kind of counteracts the idea of it being good for the environment, if that makes sense.
Is there a way for fast fashion brands to become more sustainable in the long run? Yeah, but they would not be making anywhere near as much profit, I don't think. So it would be looking at that, because they'd have to probably stop using the factories abroad or making them safe for the workers and environmentally safe, which would obviously cost a lot of money to do.
Yeah, lots of
I
landfills.
can't remember what company it is. There's a company, a clothing company, and they went and did that to some of the factories. They made them all safe, and they pay them like 3 times the wage that is the average in that country, but I can't remember which company it was.
I know for landfills, even when people try to give away to charity, sometimes when those clothes don't sell after about 3 months, they will still throw that away, even if it's been donated to them and it could support their charity. They know it isn't selling, so it goes to the landfill at the end of the day.
David's just made a comment on that because he works for a waste management company.
Yeah.
David, thank you for your comments on that. Yes. I was just going to add a couple of things, just following on from what Anthony's question. In business, you often get coalitions of firms that kind of work around a particular issue, whether it's renewable energy or recycling. And these coalitions are forming more and more across the business community, but they don't tend to be sector specific. They tend to be on particular issues which cut across a number of sectors, like textiles, like manufacturing, chemicals, and so on. So I don't think I've come across a coalition of textile firms that are starting to work together on sustainability issues in any meaningful way. The other thing was talking a lot about materials in kind of closed loop kind of systems akin to the circular economy model, which many businesses are trying to work to, whereas you put materials into the system and you keep them in the system. So you minimize waste. You kind of just minimize waste all the time. This is something which many manufacturing companies, like textile companies, are trying to do with varying degrees of success. So I just wanted to add those extra comments on there. So yeah, anyone else got any more questions, please? I'm not too sure how long we've got left, actually. But anyone have any more questions? Let's have a look at the chat box. Was there? I think, Anna, we've answered your question, haven't we? David, did you want to come back on anything that you've raised so far?
From David's one, I looked into the charity shop sort of donating, so obviously unwanted clothes, and it says that 85% of stuff donated to charity shops ends up back in landfill through not being sold. So that the best way to get rid of old clothes you really don't want anymore was to first see if you can upcycle, reuse, swap with your friends and sell it, and then as a last resort donate to charity shops, because if it's not sold quite quickly it does end up straight into landfill.
It's a very high percentage, isn't it, Jenna? Wow.
Yeah, there was someone who was asking if we were happy to share those slides.
Yes, what we can do is, if you like, we can upload both the, well, this is being recorded, this webinar, so we can upload the MP4 video file, and plus also, if you're okay with that, Jenna and Michelle, the PowerPoint file as well onto the website.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good, because there's a number of people who couldn't make it today who've asked if they could see it retrospectively.
Okay.
Great. Okay, are there any more questions then from anyone?
I got some new messages.
Bethan has messaged. Yes, there's a question from Bethan. Or is it more of a statement?
I've not actually looked into the recycled clothes bins actually. I'm not really sure. I think I'd probably have to research it.
Yeah, the
The
main
ones
thing
at
is that,
supermarkets and in the car
Yeah.
parks. Yeah. David said he doesn't know anything about it either. Yes. But
I suppose
10%,
it's-
you mentioned at the beginning of your talk, 10% of global emissions.
Yeah.
And that is a lot. So at the moment, global emissions are around 40 gigatons a year. Okay, so that's a lot. That's 40 billion tons of carbon. So for the textile industry, we're talking 4 billion tons of carbon every year can be attributed to that sector. So that's a really, really high percentage.
Yeah. Yeah, the fashion industry pretty much came second in a lot of things. I think the carbon emissions, it was just oil that was ahead of them. The water was just agriculture. They also have a large ecological footprint as well, not just a large carbon footprint.
Okay, so are there any final questions then for Michelle and Jenna? Or shall we wrap things up, if you'll excuse the pun? Great. Okay, well, let's round things up, and I'd just like to say a virtual round of applause to you, Jenna and Michelle, for your presentation. We very, very much appreciate it. We do actually have a hand clap from Lucy. Thank you very much, Lucy. And I don't know how to do the hand clap thing. I'll work that out next one. We do have another webinar from another student member of SustainNET. Ellie is going to, or was it Elle? Is going to give a talk on plastics. So watch out for that. I haven't got a date yet for that, but look out for more announcements about SustainNET webinars coming up. And if you are not a member of SustainNET and would like to, just write to me and we can have a conversation. So my name is Christopher Dent. Details about how to contact us are on the the SustainNET website. So I'd like to thank you all very much for being part of this webinar. Stay safe, keep well, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
you,
you everyone.
everybody.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.